Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1: Quiet Waters. Santiago Griffin had learned patience in the mountains of Afghanistan, where a single breath at the wrong moment could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. These days, that patience manifested in smaller ways. Waiting for his coffee to brew just right, letting his teenage son Chase work through homework problems on his own before offering help, or sitting through another parent-teacher conference with the same forced smile he'd worn through diplomatic briefings. At 42, Santiago carried his 18 years as a Navy SEAL sniper like invisible armor. Most neighbors in their suburban Colorado town knew him as the quiet contractor who renovated homes, the guy who kept his lawn pristine and waved politely from his driveway. They didn't know about the confirmed kills, the medals locked in a drawer, or the nightmares that had finally faded to manageable echoes after 5 years of civilian life. His wife Audrey knew, though. She'd met him during his last stateside assignment, a physical therapist who'd worked on his shoulder after a botched insertion in Kandahar. She'd seen past the stoic exterior to the man underneath, someone who read philosophy, who could discuss Hemingway and Dostoevsky with the same intensity he brought to fieldcraft. They'd married quickly, both ready for something real and lasting. Chase had come along 2 years later, and Santiago had made a promise the day his son was born. This boy would grow up differently. No military academies, no pressure to follow in his father's footsteps. Chase could be whoever he wanted: artist, musician, teacher, whatever. Santiago would support it all. At 16, Chase was everything Santiago hadn't been at that age. Thoughtful where Santiago had been reckless, creative where Santiago had been tactical, gentle where Santiago had been hard. The kid wrote poetry, for God's sake. He played acoustic guitar and volunteered at the animal shelter. He had his mother's empathy and his father's quiet intensity, but none of the violence. Santiago was proud of that. Fiercely proud. "Dad, can you look at this essay?" Chase appeared in the doorway of Santiago's workshop, laptop in hand. It was a Friday evening in October, the kind of crisp autumn day that made Santiago grateful he'd left the desert behind. "Fitzgerald again?" Santiago set down the piece of crown molding he'd been sanding. "Yeah, Gatsby. Mrs. Riley says I'm too sympathetic to Daisy." Santiago chuckled, wiping sawdust from his hands. "Come here." They spent the next hour dissecting the novel, Santiago asking questions instead of giving answers, pushing Chase to defend his interpretations. This was their ritual, the workshop sessions where Santiago taught his son that thinking was more important than knowing, that defending your position mattered more than being right. "You're going to do fine in college," Santiago said when they finished. "Any school would be lucky to have you." Chase ducked his head, embarrassed. "If I get in anywhere decent." "You will." Santiago clapped his son's shoulder. "Your mom's making pasta. Go wash up." Dinner was normal, comfortable. Audrey talking about her patience. Chase excited about the upcoming fall play, where he'd landed a supporting role. Santiago listening more than speaking. This was what he'd fought for, even if he'd never quite articulated it during his years in uniform. These quiet moments. This peace. After Chase headed upstairs to finish homework, Audrey poured 2 glasses of wine and joined Santiago on the back deck. The October sunset painted the Rocky Mountains in shades of amber and purple. "He's different lately," Audrey said quietly. "Have you noticed?" Santiago had noticed. Chase had been quieter the past few weeks, spending more time in his room, less engaged at dinner. Santiago had chalked it up to junior year stress, college applications, SATs, the general anxiety that seemed to afflict teenagers. Growing pains, Santiago offered. "Maybe." Audrey didn't sound convinced. "Or maybe something at school. I'll talk to him." But Santiago didn't get the chance. That night passed like any other, and Saturday morning brought a renovation emergency. Burst pipe at a client's house that demanded immediate attention. By the time Santiago returned home, covered in drywall dust and exhausted, Chase had already left for his shift at the bookstore. Sunday was spent catching up on paperwork and preparing for the week ahead. Santiago had 3 projects running simultaneously, each demanding his attention and planning. The military had taught him logistics. civilian contracting required the same skills on a different battlefield. Monday morning arrived with the first real cold snap of the season. Santiago was finishing his coffee when his phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. Mr. Griffin? This is Carl Osborne, Chase's English teacher. I need to speak with you about an incident. Santiago's grip tightened on his mug. What kind of incident? I'd rather discuss this in person. Can you come to the school? Every instinct Santiago had developed over 18 years of special operations screamed at him. The teacher's tone, careful, measured, slightly condescending, triggered something deep in his gut. He'd heard that tone before, usually from officers who were about to deliver bad news while covering their own asses. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Chapter 2. First Blood. Northridge High School looked the same as it had every other time Santiago had visited. Red brick, sprawling campus, parking lot full of SUVs and beat-up sedans. He'd been here for parent-teacher conferences, for Chase's freshman orientation, for a band concert where Chase had played guitar. It had always felt safe, mundane, boringly suburban. Now it felt like enemy territory. Carl Osborne met him in the main office, mid-50s, graying hair, the kind of exhausted expression that came from 25 years of dealing with teenagers and bureaucracy. He led Santiago to a small conference room that smelled of stale coffee and anxiety. Mr. Griffin, there was an altercation Friday after school. Chase was involved in a physical confrontation with several other students. Santiago kept his expression neutral, a skill honed through countless debriefings. Was he hurt? There were no serious injuries reported. Osborne shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. However, the other students' parents are concerned. Chase threw the first punch. Something didn't add up. Chase had never been in a fight in his life. The kid apologized to furniture when he bumped into it. I'd like to hear Chase's version, Santiago said evenly. Well, that's part of the problem. Osborne's tone shifted, took on an edge that made Santiago's jaw tighten. Your son hasn't been exactly forthcoming. And frankly, Mr. Griffin, I've noticed some concerning behavior from Chase this semester. He's been withdrawn, less engaged in class. When boys act out like this, there's usually something going on at home. Where's my son right now? He's in class. But Mr. Griffin, I think we need to discuss. No. Santiago stood. We're done here. I'll talk to Chase myself. He found Chase between third and fourth period, standing at his locker with his head down. The moment Santiago saw his son's face, his blood turned to ice. Chase had a split lip, barely visible under what looked like his mother's concealer. His left eye was swollen, the bruising hidden by carefully arranged hair. His knuckles were scraped raw. Santiago had seen men after firefights who looked better. Chase. His voice came out harder than intended. Look at me. His son's eyes met his, and Santiago saw something he'd never seen there before. Fear. Not of Santiago, but of something else. Something that had crawled inside his son and made a home there. Car. Now. They didn't speak during the drive home. Santiago needed to see the full extent of the damage, needed to understand what had happened before he said something he'd regret. Audrey was at work, which was probably for the best. She'd panic, and right now Santiago needed cold clarity. Inside, Santiago pointed to the kitchen table. Sit. Shirt off. Dad. Now. Chase obeyed, and Santiago's world narrowed to a singular point of fury. The bruises covered his son's ribs, purple and yellow, at least a week old. More on his back, his shoulders. Defensive wounds, Santiago's training supplied automatically. Someone had beaten his son systematically, repeatedly. The split lip and swollen eye were recent, maybe 2 or 3 days old. This hadn't been one altercation. This had been sustained abuse. How long? Santiago's voice was deadly quiet. Dad, it's not. How long? Chase's shoulders slumped. About a month. Santiago pulled out a chair and sat, forcing himself to breathe. To think. Tell me everything. The story came out in fragments. 5 seniors on the football team. Randolph Beasley, Jared Terry, Curtis Williamson, Alvaro Gregory, and Darnell Humphrey. They'd started with verbal harassment, mockery about Chase's poetry, his volunteer work, his refusal to try out for sports. Then it escalated. Shoves in the hallway. Accidents in the parking lot. 3 weeks ago, they'd cornered him after school, beaten him in the maintenance area behind the gym where there were no cameras. Why didn't you tell us? Santiago's hands were shaking. He clasped them together to hide it. Because I knew what you'd do. Chase's voice cracked. I knew you'd want to fix it, and I wanted to handle it myself. Like a normal person. This isn't normal, Chase. This is assault. I went to Mr. Osborne. He said boys will be boys, that I needed to toughen up. Chase wiped his eyes angrily. Then I went to Coach Fitzpatrick because he's in charge of the football team. He laughed at me, Dad. He said maybe if I could throw a punch, I wouldn't be such an easy target. Call me a coward. Santiago felt something shift inside him, a door opening that he'd kept locked for 5 years. The part of him that had been trained to identify threats and eliminate them with surgical precision. The part that had made him one of the most effective operators in SEAL Team 6. Friday, he said carefully. What happened Friday? They cornered me again. All 5 of them. I was tired of running, tired of being afraid. So I fought back. A bitter smile crossed Chase's face. I got Beasley pretty good before the others jumped in. That's when a teacher finally showed up. And Osborne blamed you. Said, I threw the first punch. Said it was my fault. The 5 of them are getting a week's suspension. I'm getting 2 weeks and a note in my permanent record. Santiago stood, walked to the window. The mountains looked the same as they had yesterday, but everything felt different. Sharper. More dangerous. Dad. Chase's voice was small. Please don't do anything crazy. Santiago turned back to his son, his gentle, creative, kind son who'd been beaten for the crime of being different, who'd been failed by every adult who was supposed to protect him. Go to your room. Ice those ribs. Your mother will be home in 2 hours. Dad, I need to think. After Chase left, Santiago sat in the silence of his kitchen and let himself feel it. The rage, the guilt, the cold calculation. He'd spent 18 years learning how to hurt people. 5 years trying to unlearn it. But some skills, once acquired, never truly left. He pulled out his phone and made 3 calls. The first was to an old teammate who now worked private security. The second was to a lawyer who specialized in school district litigation. The third was to his wife. Audrey, you need to come home. Now. Then Santiago opened his laptop and began doing what he did best, reconnaissance. He started with the 5 boys, pulling up their social media profiles, their sports statistics, their family information. Then Coach Harlan Fitzpatrick, 2 decades at Northridge High, former college linebacker, reputation as a hard-ass who produced several Division I recruits. Finally, he searched for Carl Osborne, English teacher, department head, 25 years at the school. Mediocre reviews on teacher rating sites. Multiple complaints about dismissive behavior towards students. Nothing actionable. Nothing that would have triggered administrative action. By the time Audrey got home, Santiago had compiled dossiers on all 7 men. He knew their addresses, their schedules, their routines. He knew where they were vulnerable. The argument with Audrey was short and fierce. She wanted to go through proper channels, lawyers, school board, police reports. Santiago agreed to all of it, but he also made it clear, if the system failed their son, he wouldn't. Promise me you won't do anything stupid, Audrey pleaded. Santiago looked at his wife, the woman who'd healed him when he'd thought healing was impossible. I promise I'll protect our son. It wasn't the promise she'd asked for, but it was the only one he could make. Chapter 3. Intelligence Gathering. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in patience. Santiago filed police reports, hired the lawyer, documented everything. He took photos of Chase's bruises as they healed. He requested security footage from the school and was told none existed from the maintenance area. He attended meetings with the principal, where he was assured this was being taken very seriously. Nothing happened. The 5 boys served their 1-week suspensions and returned to school. Chase stayed home, his 2-week punishment feeling more like protective custody. Santiago watched his son retreat further into himself, the light that had always defined him dimming day by day. Meanwhile, Santiago conducted surveillance. He followed Harlan Fitzpatrick for 3 days, learning the coach's routine. Morning coffee at the same diner, afternoon practice sessions, evening beers at McGinney's bar with other staff members. Fitzpatrick was predictable, arrogant, the kind of man who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. The five boys were easier. Teenagers broadcasted their lives on social media, documenting every party, every practice, every moment. Santiago watched their patterns, their relationships, their weaknesses. Randolph Beasley was the ringleader, quarterback for .0 GPA, full ride to USC already secured. Jared Terry and Curtis Williamson were his enforcers, both defensive linemen with reputations for vicious hits. Alvaro Gregory was the fastest, a wide receiver being recruited by Oregon. Darnell Humphrey was the biggest, a tight end with offers from 3 Big Ten schools. They were stars, untouchable, protected by their talent and the revenue they generated for the school's program. Santiago also researched their families. Randolph's father, Xavier Beasley, was a corporate attorney. Jared's father, Ramon Terry, owned a chain of car dealerships. Curtis's father, Josh Williamson, was a city councilman. Alvaro's father, Israel Gregory, was a surgeon. Darnell's father, Abel Humphrey, was a real estate developer. Powerful men who'd taught their sons that power meant immunity. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Victoria Kemp, was pessimistic about their chances. School districts are very good at protecting themselves, she explained during a meeting at her downtown office. The boys were suspended. Technically, the school took action. Your son's record will follow him, but it's not insurmountable. If we push too hard, they'll claim he was the aggressor and we can make things worse. So they get away with it, Santiago said flatly. Unless we can prove a pattern of behavior, systematic negligence, or find other victims willing to come forward. Yes, they'll get away with it. Santiago thanked her for her honesty and left. That night, he made another call to his old teammate, Chance Gross. They'd served together in Team 6, had shared foxholes in Fallujah and mountains in the Hindu Kush. Chance now ran a private security firm in Denver, specialized in corporate protection and discreet problem-solving. "Griff, you sound different," Chance said when they met for coffee. "What's going on?" Santiago told him. "Everything." When he finished, Chance was silent for a long moment. "What do you need?" "Information. Real information. I need to know if these kids have done this before. I need to know what kind of men their fathers are. I need leverage. That's not cheap. I have savings." Chance studied him. "You sure about this? Once you start down this road." "I'm already on it. I just need help seeing where it leads." 3 days later, Chance delivered. The report was comprehensive, damning, and exactly what Santiago needed. Randolph Beasley had been accused of sexual assault by a girl at a party last year. Her family had been paid off, the complaint buried. Jared Terry had put a kid in the hospital's sophomore year. Another incident swept under the rug by his father's legal team. Curtis Williamson had a sealed juvenile record. The details were sketchy, but Chance's contacts suggested drug dealing. Alvaro Gregory's family had moved from California after problems at his previous school. Darnell Humphrey was the only one without a serious record, but he'd been present for every incident, always standing lookout. They weren't just bullies. They were predators in training, and the school had enabled them. "There's more," Chance said, sliding another folder across the table. "Coach Fitzpatrick. 3 complaints from parents over the years about his treatment of players. Nothing formal, but there's a pattern. He protects his stars and throws everyone else under the bus. Osborne's clean, just lazy. But Fitzpatrick, he's the problem." Santiago absorbed this, feeling the plan crystallize in his mind. What about their fathers? Exactly what you'd expect. Rich, connected, arrogant. They got a poker game every Thursday night, rotating houses. They think they run this town. They're about to learn they don't. Santiago spent the next week planning. Not the hot-headed revenge of an angry father, but the calculated operation of a trained operator. He identified the critical pressure points, the vulnerabilities, the exact sequence of moves required to dismantle his enemies completely. The lawyer route would take months, maybe years. His son didn't have that kind of time. Chase was already withdrawn, already damaged. Every day that passed without justice was another day those boys learned that violence worked, that their father's money and influence made them untouchable. Santiago couldn't allow that. Wouldn't allow that. On Friday afternoon, 2 weeks after the meeting with Osborne, Santiago drove to Northridge High School. Football practice was underway. He could hear Coach Fitzpatrick's voice carrying across the field, barking orders with the confidence of a man who'd never had to question his authority. Santiago parked and walked toward the practice field. Several parents were in the stands, mostly mothers, a few fathers checking their phones. Santiago recognized Xavier Beasley among them, the attorney who'd paid off his son's victim. The man wore expensive sunglasses and a smug expression. Santiago descended to the field. Fitzpatrick saw him coming and blew his whistle. Practice fields closed to visitors. "I'm Chase Griffin's father. We need to talk." Fitzpatrick's expression hardened. "Nothing to talk about. Your boy got what he deserved. Maybe if you'd taught him to be a man instead of a coward, he wouldn't be in this situation." The field went quiet. Players stopped, turning to watch. Santiago saw the 5 boys, Beasley, Terry, Williamson, Gregory, Humphrey, standing together near the 50-yard line, smirking. Santiago stepped closer to Fitzpatrick, invading his personal space. The coach was bigger, outweighed him by 40 pounds, a middle-aged spread. But Santiago had learned a long time ago that size didn't matter when you knew exactly where and how to apply force. "Those 5 boys have been terrorizing my son for a month. They cornered him, beat him, and you did nothing. Worse, you mocked him for coming to you. Your kid's soft. Sometimes boys need to learn the hard way." Fitzpatrick smiled. "What are you going to do about it, old man?" Santiago smiled back. It wasn't a friendly expression. "I'm going to give you a chance to do the right thing. Kick those boys off the team. Make it clear that behavior like theirs won't be tolerated. Apologize to my son. Or what? Or I'll teach them the lesson you failed to." Fitzpatrick laughed. It was the wrong response. "Get off my field before I have you arrested for trespassing." Santiago nodded slowly, committing this moment to memory. Then he turned and walked away, aware of every eye on him, every whispered comment. He heard one of the boys, sounded like Beasley, say something crude about Chase. Heard the others laugh. He kept walking. Xavier Beasley intercepted him in the parking lot, 2 other fathers flanking him. Santiago recognized Josh Williamson and Israel Gregory from his research. "Mr. Griffin." Xavier's voice was smooth, practiced, threatening. "I heard what you said to Coach Fitzpatrick. I want to make something very clear. If you come near my son or his teammates again, I'll bury you in legal action so deep you'll lose everything. Your house, your business, your freedom. Do you understand?" Santiago looked at the 3 men, seeing not threats but targets. Measuring distances, calculating force required, identifying vulnerable points. "Old habits. I understand perfectly," he said quietly. He drove home in silence, his mind already shifting from reconnaissance to action. He'd given them a chance. They'd refused it. Now things would proceed according to his plan, a plan they wouldn't see coming until it was far too late. That evening, he told Audrey and Chase about the confrontation. Audrey was furious that he'd gone to the school. Chase looked terrified. "Dad, please. Let's just move on. I can switch schools, we can." "No." Santiago's voice was final. "Running isn't the answer. These boys need to learn that actions have consequences, that they can't just hurt people without repercussions." "What are you going to do?" Audrey demanded. Santiago met her eyes. "Whatever it takes." Chapter 4. The Opening Move. Saturday morning, Santiago woke at 0500, habit from his military days. He went for a run through the pre-dawn streets, letting his mind settle into operational mode. This wasn't about rage anymore. It was about precision. At 0800, he called Xavier Beasley's office number. The attorney's assistant answered. "I'd like to schedule a meeting with Mr. Beasley. Today, if possible, regarding a private matter involving his son." 20 minutes later, his phone rang. Xavier himself. "Mr. Griffin, I thought I made myself clear yesterday." "You did. But I have information about your son you'll want to see before it becomes public. It involved an incident from last year. A girl named Catherine Ford." Silence. Then my office. "Noon. Come alone." Santiago smiled. The first domino was positioned. He spent the morning preparing. Chance's report included photographs, witness statements, hospital records from the girl Randolph had assaulted. Santiago had copies made, organized them into a professional presentation. He also prepared similar folders for the other four boys' fathers, all the dirt he'd accumulated, all the secrets they thought were buried. Xavier Beasley's law office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise. Santiago was escorted to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Xavier entered 5 minutes later, flanked by another attorney, probably Ramon Terry, based on Santiago's research. "You've got 10 minutes, Xavier said coldly. Santiago slid the folder across the table. "Catherine Ford. Your son assaulted her at a party 13 months ago. You paid her family $75,000 to keep quiet. That's obstruction of justice and bribery. If this reaches the district attorney, your son loses his USC scholarship at minimum. At maximum, he goes to trial as an adult." Xavier's face darkened. "That matter was settled privately. You have no standing. I have everything. Witness statements, photos of her injuries, hospital records you thought were sealed, text messages between you and her father arranging the payment." Santiago leaned forward. "I also have similar information on Jared Terry, Curtis Williamson, and Alvaro Gregory. All of your sons are criminals. You've just been rich enough to hide it. You're threatening us." Ramon Terry spoke for the first time, his voice tight with fury. "I'm offering you a choice. Your sons leave mine alone. Forever. They transfer schools, or they graduate and disappear to college. But they never speak to, look at, or think about Chase Griffin again. In return, this information stays private. And if we refuse, then Monday morning, copies of everything go to the district attorney, the school board, the local news stations, and social media. Your sons become pariahs. USC rescinds Randolph's scholarship. The other colleges pull their offers. And you all learn that money can't buy everything." Xavier stood, his face red. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. We will destroy you. Try." Santiago stood as well, matching the attorney's height. "I'm a ghost. I've been dead men walking in places that would give you nightmares. You're a lawyer from Colorado who thinks a law degree makes you dangerous. We're not the same." The meeting ended badly, with threats and promises of lawsuits. Santiago left the building knowing they wouldn't cooperate. Rich men never did. Not first. They needed to feel pain before they understood consequences. That evening, Phase 2 began. Santiago had sent similar meeting requests to the other fathers, all scheduled for Sunday. None agreed to meet. Instead, he received a group text from an unknown number. "We know what you're trying to do. It won't work. Your son will pay for this." Santiago screenshot the text and forwarded it to his lawyer. Then he responded, "Touch my son again, and you'll regret it. Consider this your only warning." Sunday morning, Santiago took Chase to the shooting range. His son had never been interested in guns, but Santiago insisted. "I need you to know how to defend yourself, just in case." Chase was a natural, patient, careful, methodical. By the end of the session, he could hit center mass consistently at 25 yards. Santiago was proud, but also heartbroken. This wasn't the life he'd wanted for his son. "Dad, why are we really here?" Chase asked as they cleaned the weapons. "Because sometimes good people need to know how to fight back." "Against who?" "Those guys' lawyers. Against anyone who tries to hurt you." That afternoon, Santiago received a call from Principal Margaret Miller. The school had been informed about his threats against the football players' families. He was banned from campus pending an investigation. "This is exactly what we warned you about," Victoria Kemp said when he called her. "They're painting you as the aggressor. Let them. I'm just getting started." Monday morning, instead of going to work, Santiago drove to McGinney's bar. He arrived at 1100, an hour before the lunch rush. The owner, an ex-Marine named Harlan Fitzpatrick's brother, was behind the bar. Santiago ordered a beer he wouldn't drink and waited. At 11:30, Coach Fitzpatrick walked in, routine, predictable. He spotted Santiago immediately, his expression hardening. "You've got some nerve showing your face. We need to talk. Privately. I got nothing to say to you." Santiago stepped close. "Your star players are criminals. Sexual assault, drug dealing, aggravated assault. I have proof. You've been protecting them, enabling them. That makes you complicit. When this goes public, and it will go public. You'll lose everything. Your job, your reputation, maybe your freedom. Fitzpatrick's face went pale. You're bluffing. Am I? Santiago pulled out his phone, showed him photos from the reports. I gave their fathers a chance to make this right. They refused. Now I'm giving you one. Public apology to my son. Those 5 boys kicked off the team and expelled. Or I burn down everything you've built. You can't. Watch me. Santiago left the bar, knowing he'd planted another seed of fear. The key to psychological warfare was making the enemy uncertain, making them question everything. These men thought they were untouchable. Santiago was teaching them otherwise. That evening, his house alarm went off at 2100. 3 cars were parked outside, expensive sedans, tinted windows. Santiago recognized them from his surveillance. The fathers had come to him. He'd been expecting this. Audrey and Chase were upstairs. Santiago had prepared for this scenario, had contingencies ready. He stepped onto his porch as 5 men emerged from the cars. Xavier Beasley, Ramon Terry, Josh Williamson, Israel Gregory, and Abel Humphrey. Gentlemen, Santiago's voice was calm. You're on my property. I suggest you leave. We're here to make something clear, Xavier said, stepping forward. Your threats, your blackmail, it ends now. You're going to back off, apologize, and disappear. Or we'll make sure you lose everything. Already tried that speech. Didn't work then, won't work now. You think you're tough. Abel Humphrey, the real estate developer, was the biggest of the group. You think your military service makes you special? We run this town. We can destroy you with a phone call. Santiago smiled. Wrong move. From the darkness of his porch, Santiago had a clear field of view. He positioned motion-activated cameras 2 days ago, covering every angle. Everything being said was being recorded, uploaded to cloud storage automatically. You're threatening me on my property, Santiago continued. That's menacing, possibly criminal trespassing. But please continue. The district attorney will love this footage. The men realized their mistake too late. Xavier tried to recover. We're just here to talk. No, you're here to intimidate. Just like your sons intimidated mine. The difference is I don't intimidate easily. Santiago descended the porch steps, moving into the light. 5 men against 1, but they weren't warriors. They were soft, comfortable, used to winning through money and lawyers. Here's what's going to happen, Santiago said quietly. You're going to leave. Then you're going to think very carefully about what comes next. Because if anything happens to me, to my wife, or to my son, anything at all, everything I have on your boys goes public automatically. I've set up a dead man switch. You can't buy it, threaten it, or lawyer your way around it. You're insane, Josh Williamson spat. I'm a father protecting his son. You'd do the same if you were actually decent parents instead of enablers raising predators. Israel Gregory lunged forward, fist raised. Santiago didn't even blink. He caught the surgeon's wrist mid-swing, twisted, and had the man on his knees in less than a second. The others froze. Don't. Santiago's voice was ice. I've killed men for less. You really want to test me? He released Gregory, who scrambled back toward the cars, cradling his wrist. The 5 men retreated, but Xavier turned back at his car. This isn't over. No, Santiago agreed. It's just beginning. After they left, Santiago went inside to find Audrey and Chase watching from the upstairs window, pale and shaken. It's okay, he said. They won't be back. How do you know? Audrey demanded. Because now they're afraid. And fear makes people careful. But Santiago knew it wasn't over. These men would regroup, would plan their countermove. Which was fine, because Santiago had already anticipated their next 3 moves and had counters ready for each. The game was entering its next phase, and Santiago always played to win. Chapter 5, Escalation. Tuesday morning brought unexpected developments. Santiago received a cease and desist letter from Xavier Beasley's firm, demanding he destroy all illegally obtained information and threatening criminal charges for stalking, harassment, and extortion. Victoria Kemp read it and laughed. This is defensive. They're scared. The problem is, some of their claims have merit. If you obtain financial records without authorization, Everything I have came from public records, social media, and private investigators. All legal. Then we're fine. But Santiago, they're going to keep escalating. These aren't men who accept defeat. She was right. By Wednesday, Santiago found himself being followed. A black SUV that picked him up at his house and shadowed him to job sites. Not subtle, meant to intimidate. Santiago led them on a 2-hour tour of meaningless locations before finally stopping at a police station and walking inside to file a harassment report. The SUV disappeared. Chase returned to school Wednesday against Santiago's wishes. But his son was insistent. I can't hide forever, Dad. They already won if I do that. Santiago drove him personally, watching as Chase walked into the building with his head up and his shoulders back. Pride mixed with fear in Santiago's chest. His son was brave, maybe too brave. The call came at 13:15. Principal Miller, voice tight with barely controlled fury. Mr. Griffin, there's been another incident. Santiago's blood turned to ice. What happened? Chase confronted Randolph Beasley in the cafeteria. Words were exchanged. Security broke it up before it became physical. But given the situation, I'm suspending Chase again. No. Santiago's voice was flat. You're not. Excuse me. My son has been the victim since day one. Your school failed to protect him. Your staff enabled his attackers. You're not punishing him for finally standing up for himself. If you suspend Chase, I'll have a federal civil rights lawsuit filed by end of business today. Hostile educational environment, institutional negligence, discrimination. Your choice. Silence. Then, Chase can stay. But one more incident. Won't be his fault. We both know that. Santiago picked up Chase after school. His son was shaking with adrenaline and fear. I couldn't help it. Beasley was talking to his friends about you, saying your threats didn't scare them, that their dads were going to handle you. I told him if they came near you, I'd... Chase's voice broke. I told him I'd kill him. Santiago pulled over, turned to his son. Did anyone hear you say that? I don't know. Maybe. Listen to me carefully. From now on, you don't engage with them. You don't respond to threats. You don't rise to bait. You document everything and tell me. Understand? Why? So you can handle it? Dad, I'm not a kid anymore. No, so we don't give them ammunition. They're waiting for you to slip up, to give them an excuse to paint you as the problem. We're smarter than that. That night, Santiago received a call from Chance. You asked me to monitor social media. There's chatter. The boys are planning something for Friday night. Talking about teaching someone a lesson, making an example. Could be nothing, but it's not nothing. Where? Party at Jared Terry's house. Parents out of town. Big football celebration before the playoffs. Santiago's mind raced through scenarios. I need surveillance on that house Friday night. Can you do it? Already ahead of you. I'll have a team in place. Thursday passed in tense anticipation. Santiago worked on a renovation but couldn't focus. His phone was in his hand constantly, waiting for bad news. It came at 1900, but not from where he expected. Audrey called from the hospital where she worked, her voice shaking. Someone slashed my tires in the parking garage. All 4 of them. Security footage was malfunctioning. Are you safe? I'm at the security office. But Santiago, I'm scared. This is getting out of control. He picked her up an hour later, after tow trucks and police reports and useless security guards who promised to investigate. On the drive home, Audrey finally said what she'd been holding back. You need to stop. Whatever you're planning, whatever revenge you think you're getting, it's not worth this. They're targeting me now. What's next, Chase? What happens when they hurt him again to get to you? They won't. You can't guarantee that. Yes, I can. Santiago's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Because after Friday, this ends. One way or another. What's happening Friday? Justice. He wouldn't say more, and Audrey was too exhausted to push. At home, Santiago checked the perimeter security, made sure the cameras were functioning, and reviewed his plans for the weekend. Friday morning, Chase announced he'd been invited to Jared Terry's party. Everyone's going. If I don't show, it looks like I'm afraid. You're not going. Dad. Not negotiable. These boys are planning something. I don't know what, but you're not walking into an ambush. Father and son argued for 20 minutes before Chase finally relented. But Santiago saw the frustration in his eyes, the feeling of helplessness. It mirrored what Santiago himself had felt watching his son suffer. That evening, Santiago positioned himself a block from Jared Terry's house, watching Chance's surveillance feed on his tablet. Cars began arriving at 2,000, teenagers with beer, loud music, the standard suburban party. The five boys were there, easy to spot in their Letterman jackets, holding court like kings. At 2,100, Chance's voice came through Santiago's earpiece. Movement. Beasley and two others heading to the garage. Looks like they're preparing something. Santiago watched the feed. The boys emerged carrying baseball bats, getting into Beasley's truck. They drove away from the party, heading toward Santiago's neighborhood. His trap was sprung. Follow them, Santiago instructed. I'll be waiting. He'd prepared for this, had anticipated they might target his home while Chase was supposedly at the party. He'd moved Audrey and Chase to a hotel hours ago, telling them it was a precaution. His house was empty, covered in cameras, and Santiago was about to teach these boys the most important lesson of their lives. He beat them to his street, positioned himself in shadow, and waited. Beasley's truck pulled up at 21:30. Three boys emerged: Randolph Beasley, Jared Terry, and Curtis Williamson. They approached his house with bats raised, talking and laughing, thinking they were untouchable. Santiago let them get to the porch, let them raise their bats to break his windows. Then he stepped out of the shadows, phone in hand, camera recording. Stop right there. The boys froze. Beasley recovered first, cocky smile returning. Mr. Griffin, you're not supposed to be here. We were just about to commit vandalism and trespassing, all on camera. Your face is clear as day. No one will believe you, Jared sneered. Your word against ours. Not my word. Video evidence. Plus the 3 security cameras on my house, the 2 on my neighbors' houses, and the surveillance team watching from the street. Say hi to the professionals, boys. A van pulled up, side door opening to reveal Chance and 2 other operators with cameras and equipment. The boys' faces went pale. Santiago stepped closer. Drop the bats. Hands where I can see them. You can't. I can and I will. You have 10 seconds to comply before I call the police and press charges for attempted burglary, vandalism, and menacing. Your scholarships, your future's gone. Your daddy's money won't save you from this. Curtis dropped his bat first, then Jared. Beasley held out longest, hatred burning in his eyes. Finally, he let fall. You think this changes anything? Beasley snarled. Well, you'll do nothing. Because if I ever see you, hear about you, or even dream about you bothering my son again, this video goes public, along with everything else I have. You want to test me? Go ahead. But remember, I'm a man your fathers couldn't intimidate, couldn't threaten, couldn't buy off. What makes you think you'll do better? Santiago called the police. He filed charges. He watched as the 3 boys were arrested, processed, and ultimately released to their furious fathers. The other 2 boys, Gregory and Humphrey, were picked up at the party, also charged as accessories after witnesses came forward about their planning. By midnight Friday, all 5 were sitting in holding cells, their bright futures suddenly very much in doubt. Chapter 6. Pressure. Saturday morning exploded with fallout. Santiago's phone rang continuously. Reporters, lawyers, school administrators. The arrest of 5-star athletes made local news, then state news, then briefly touched national outlets when the details emerged about the sustained bullying of Chase. Victoria Kemp called at 0700, sounding energized. This changes everything. The arrests give us leverage. The school district is terrified of litigation now. I've already had 2 calls from their legal team wanting to settle. I don't want settlement. I want accountability. You'll get both. But Santiago, the other families are going to come at you hard. They'll try to paint this as entrapment, as you manipulating their sons. Let them try. I have video of 3 teenagers approaching my house with weapons. Intent clear. That's not entrapment. That's evidence. The Fathers' counter-move came Sunday. A press conference, all 5 families united, claiming their sons were the real victims. Xavier Beasley led the attack, his lawyer face perfected for cameras. Santiago Griffin is a troubled veteran who has been stalking and harassing our children for weeks. He set up an elaborate trap designed to ruin their futures. These boys made a mistake. They let their frustration with his threats lead them to his property. But they committed no actual crime. This is a clear case of entrapment, and we will fight it vigorously. The counter-narrative was taking shape. Santiago watched it unfold with cold calculation. They were trying to use his military service against him. The troubled vet angle, PTSD, instability. It was a smart play. It was also exactly what he'd expected. Sunday evening, Santiago held his own press conference from his front lawn. No lawyers, no scripts. Just him, Audrey, and Chase standing together. My name is Santiago Griffin. I served 18 years as a Navy SEAL, and yes, I saw combat. I've been to dark places and done difficult things in service of this country. But I came home, built a life, raised a family. I'm not unstable or dangerous, except to people who threaten my son. Chase is 16. For a month, he was systematically beaten by 5 bigger, older students. We went through proper channels: teachers, coaches, administrators. We were dismissed, mocked, blamed. My son was punished while his attackers walked free. When those same attackers came to my home Friday night with weapons, I was ready. Not because I'm a vigilante, but because I'm a father who knows the system failed us. This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. These boys needed to learn that actions have consequences. Their fathers needed to learn that money and influence don't excuse cruelty. And the school needed to learn that enabling bullies makes them complicit in the harm. Santiago pulled out his phone, held it up to the cameras. I have evidence of everything. The assaults on my son, the threats to my family, the prior incidents these boys' families paid to bury. I gave them multiple chances to do the right thing. They chose intimidation instead. So now it's in the justice system's hands. The press conference went viral. On Monday morning, the narrative had shifted. Social media exploded with support for Chase, outrage at the school, and demands for investigation into the family's cover-ups of previous incidents. The district attorney, a woman named Sheena Bird who'd been elected on a reform platform, called Santiago personally. Mr. Griffin, I need to see everything you have. All of it. Santiago spent Monday afternoon in her office, laying out the entire case. Catherine Ford's assault by Randolph Beasley. The kid Jared Terry hospitalized. Curtis Williamson's sealed juvenile record. The pattern of violence and cover-ups. Sheena listened, took notes, and when he finished, her expression was grim. This is bigger than 5 kids with bats. This is institutional corruption. Families using wealth to obstruct justice. Schools prioritizing sports revenue over student safety. I can work with this. What about the charges against the boys? They'll stick. The video is clear. But more importantly, I'm opening investigations into the previous incidents. If your information checks out, and I believe it will, we're looking at multiple charges against multiple people, possibly including some of the fathers for obstruction and bribery. Santiago felt something shift in his chest. Not satisfaction yet, but the first glimpse of actual justice. What do you need from me? Stay clean. Don't give them anything to use against you. Let the system work now. He wanted to laugh at that. Let the system work after it had failed so completely. But Sheena Bird seemed different from the administrators and bureaucrats he dealt with. She seemed to actually care. That evening, Coach Harlan Fitzpatrick resigned from Northridge High. The official statement cited personal reasons, but everyone knew why. The school board announced an independent investigation into the athletic department's handling of disciplinary issues. Carl Osborne was placed on administrative leave pending review of multiple complaints about his dismissal of student concerns. The dominoes were falling. Tuesday brought more news. Oregon and 2 Big Ten schools withdrew their offers to Alvaro Gregory and Darnell Humphrey. The boys hadn't been convicted of anything yet, but universities were running scared from the publicity. Wednesday, Catherine Ford, the girl Randolph Beasley had assaulted, came forward publicly. Her interview with a local news station was devastating. I was told if I pressed charges, my family would lose everything. His father said he'd destroy us. I was 15. I believed him. Her courage sparked others. 2 more girls came forward with allegations against the football players. A former teammate admitted he'd been pressured by Fitzpatrick to lie about injuries sustained during hazing incidents. The investigation expanded. The school board announced terminations, restructuring new policies. The local paper ran an editorial calling for criminal charges against the families who'd paid for silence. Through it all, Santiago maintained his routine. He worked his renovation jobs, took Chase to therapy sessions, supported Audrey as she processed the trauma of everything they'd been through. He didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. He just waited. Thursday night, his doorbell rang at 2200. Santiago checked the security camera. It was Israel Gregory, alone, looking haggard. He answered the door. "Dr. Gregory, I need to talk to you. Please." Santiago studied the man, saw genuine desperation. He stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind him. "Talk. My son isn't a bad kid. He made mistakes, got caught up with the wrong crowd. But he doesn't deserve to have his life ruined. You have your justice, the investigation, the arrest, the public shame. Can't you just let it go? Let them move on. Did your son let my son move on? When Chase begged them to stop, did they show mercy? They're just boys. No, they're predators. And you enabled them. You want mercy now? Where was your mercy when my son was bleeding? We came to adults for help and was dismissed." Gregory's face crumpled. "What do you want? Money? We can pay. I don't want your money. I want you to understand what you did. You raised a boy who thinks violence is acceptable, who thinks being part of the crowd excuses cruelty. That's on you. The consequences he faces now, those are earned. Maybe they'll teach him what you failed to." Santiago went back inside, leaving Gregory standing in his driveway. He felt no satisfaction in the man's pain, but he felt no regret either. These men needed to understand the weight of their failures as fathers. Friday brought the preliminary hearing. All 5 boys appeared with their lawyers, entering pleas of not guilty. The judge set bail conditions, including no contact with Chase or the Griffin family, surrender of passports, and weekly check-ins. Santiago sat in the courtroom, watching the boys who'd terrorized his son now terrified themselves. They looked smaller somehow, stripped of their swagger and certainty. For the first time, they were facing consequences they couldn't escape. After the hearing, Xavier Beasley approached Santiago in the hallway, his lawyer face gone, replaced with something raw and desperate. "You happy now? You've destroyed these boys' futures. Over what? Some teenage bullying? My son was going to USC. Your son assaulted a girl, and you paid her family to stay quiet. He terrorized my son, and you hired lawyers instead of teaching him to be better. He came to my home with a weapon, and you called a mistake. Everything happening to him now, that's you failing as a father. Don't blame me for revealing what you help hide. This isn't over." Santiago stepped close. "Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet. Your son, and all the others, will face trial. Some will be convicted. All will carry this forever. And you'll have to live with knowing you could have prevented it by being a decent parent. That's your punishment, knowing you did this to him." He walked away, leaving Xavier Beasley standing in the courthouse hallway, finally understanding what it meant to be powerless. Chapter 7. The Trap Springs. The trial was set for 8 weeks out, giving both sides time to prepare. But Santiago's real work was just beginning. The arrests were public, the consequences visible, but he wanted something more. He wanted the system itself exposed. The investigation into the school had expanded, but Santiago had information the investigators didn't. During his reconnaissance, he'd uncovered something bigger than just Coach Fitzpatrick's protection of star players. He'd found a pattern. For the past 5 years, students who'd filed complaints against football players mysteriously had their academic records affected. Recommendation letters never arrived. College applications got lost. One student had even been suspended for supposedly plagiarizing a paper after going to the principal about being assaulted at a party. Santiago compiled it all: dates, names, patterns of retaliation. He gave it to Sheena Bird, who assigned 2 investigators to dig deeper. What they found was even worse. Principal Margaret Miller had been actively suppressing complaints to protect the football program, which had brought in over $800,000 in revenue last year through ticket sales, boosters, and community donations. The school had become a business, and the students were just collateral damage. The first week of November, the story broke. Local news ran a special report, Pipeline to Nowhere, how Northridge High sacrificed students for sports. It detailed everything: the suppressed complaints, the retaliation against victims, the financial incentives that motivated the cover-ups. Margaret Miller resigned Monday morning. The school board announced criminal investigation into obstruction of justice and deprivation of civil rights. 3 board members stepped down. The district superintendent was placed on leave. The system was eating itself. But Santiago wasn't done. He'd noticed something during his research into the 5 boys' families. Their Thursday night poker games weren't just social gatherings. They were planning sessions, and planning required money. Through Chance's contacts, Santiago learned the fathers had created an LLC 3 years ago, officially for youth sports development. In reality, it was a slush fund used to pay off victims, hire lawyers, and make problems disappear. The company had no legitimate business operations, but showed expenses of over $200,000 annually. That was tax fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Santiago delivered this information to both the DEA and the IRS. Then he waited. The second week of November, federal agents raided the offices of Xavier Beasley's law firm, Ramon Terry's car dealerships, and Josh Williamson's campaign headquarters. Search warrants, seizure of financial records, questions about the LLC. The fathers had thought themselves untouchable. Now, they were scrambling to hire criminal defense attorneys for themselves. Chase was improving. Therapy was helping. And seeing his attackers face consequences had lifted a weight Santiago hadn't realized his son was carrying. Chase started writing again, poetry that was darker but more honest than before. He auditioned for a role in the winter play and got it. Life was slowly returning to something resembling normal. But Santiago knew the dangerous moment was approaching. Wounded animals were most dangerous when cornered, and these men were very cornered. The threat came on a Tuesday evening in mid-November. Santiago was working late at a renovation site when his phone rang. Chance, voice tight with urgency. They hired someone. Santiago's blood went cold. Explain. Ramon Terry has a cousin in California. Word is he reached out to some connections in Los Angeles. Not lawyers, something else. Street guys, the kind you hire when legal approaches fail. I picked up chatter that someone's coming to Colorado. Professional. How solid is this intel? Solid enough that I'm calling. These guys are desperate, Griff. They might do something stupid. Santiago had anticipated this possibility. Wealthy men without honor often turn to illegal solutions when legal ones failed. He'd served with men who'd made similar choices in different contexts. What's the timeline? Unknown. Could be days, could be weeks. But you need to be careful. Santiago went home and told Audrey everything. Her face went pale, then hardened with anger. So we get police protection. We go to the DA. And say what? That I heard a rumor someone might be hired to hurt us? There's no evidence, no actionable threat. But we can prepare. He upgraded their security system, installed panic buttons throughout the house, and taught Audrey how to use the shotgun he'd kept locked in the safe for 5 years. Chase was already comfortable with firearms from their range sessions. I won't live in fear in my own home, Audrey said fiercely. You won't have to. I'm ending this. Thursday night, Santiago watched the fathers arrive at Abel Humphrey's house for their poker game. Chance had position surveillance equipment nearby, sophisticated enough to pick up conversation through windows. Santiago listened as the 5 men argued, blamed each other, and ultimately agreed. Santiago Griffin had to be dealt with. Not killed. They weren't quite that stupid, but hurt badly enough that he'd back off, maybe even leave town. I have a guy coming in, Ramon said. He'll handle it. Griffin will understand the message. What about his son? Josh Williamson asked. Silence. Then Xavier, whatever it takes. Santiago recorded everything. Then he called Sheena Bird and played her the tape. That's conspiracy, she said immediately. I can get warrants. Not yet. I need you to trust me. Santiago, give me 72 hours. If I'm right, you'll have everything you need to charge all 5 of them with serious felonies. If I'm wrong, you can arrest me for obstruction. Sheena was quiet for a long moment. 72 hours. But if anyone gets hurt, no one will. I promise. Santiago had learned a long time ago that the best defense was a prepared offense. He knew how to set an ambush, how to turn an enemy's advantage into a fatal mistake. These men wanted to hurt him? He'd give them the opportunity. But on his terms, not theirs. Friday morning, Santiago made sure Chase and Audrey were safe, sent them to Denver to stay with Audrey's sister for the weekend. Then he prepared his home, turning it into exactly what his military instructors had taught him to create, a kill box. Not literal, not this time, but close. The hired muscle arrived Friday evening. 2 men in a nondescript sedan, California plates. Santiago watched from the surveillance feed as they scouted his house, checking angles, looking for security cameras. They found the obvious ones, missed the hidden ones Chance had installed last week. Saturday afternoon, they came. Santiago had positioned himself in a neighbor's house, an elderly veteran named Harlan who'd been thrilled to help once Santiago explained the situation. From this vantage point, Santiago had clear sight lines and the tactical advantage. The 2 men broke in through the back door at 1500. They moved through his house with practiced efficiency, looking for him. They found the empty bedrooms, the abandoned kitchen. They found the envelope Santiago had left on the dining room table. One of them opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with an address and a time. 1700 Riverside Warehouse District. They took the bait. At 1645, Santiago arrived at the warehouse, a property he'd renovated last year, still empty pending new tenants. He'd prepared it carefully. Cameras in every corner, escape routes mapped, and Chance with his team positioned outside. The 2 men arrived at 1700 exactly. Santiago was waiting in the open floor of the main space, standing in a pool of light from the skylights above. "Gentlemen, you're looking for me." They stopped, clearly not expecting their target to be waiting. The larger one, muscled, tattooed, professional, smiled. "Smart guy. Saves us time. Ramon Terry sends a message. Back off, or things get worse." "Here's my message back. You're both under arrest." That's when the warehouse lights came on fully, revealing Sheena Bird, 2 federal agents, and 4 police officers in every doorway. The men turned, hands instinctively moving to weapons they'd left in their car, smart enough not to bring guns to what they thought was a quick intimidation job. "Hands up," Sheena ordered. "You're being charged with conspiracy to commit assault, stalking, and interstate commission of a crime. Gentlemen, you just ended your careers." They were cuffed and read their rights. One of them, angry and stupid, decided to cooperate immediately. "Terry hired us. Said just to scare the guy, rough him up a little. We got texts, payment records, everything." "We know," Sheena said. "Mr. Griffin's been feeding us intelligence for weeks. You walked into a trap." The man's face went slack as he realized. This wasn't bad luck. This was deliberate. They'd been played from the start. After they were taken away, Sheena turned to Santiago. "That was reckless. That was necessary. Now you have conspiracy charges against Ramon Terry, probably connection to the other fathers if their communications back this up. This isn't just about 5 kids with bats anymore. This is about powerful men trying to obstruct justice. It's also about you taking insane risks. If this had gone wrong, it wouldn't have. I spent 18 years learning how to control variables. This was controlled from the start." Sheena shook her head, but she was smiling. "You're either brilliant or crazy. I'm a father. Sometimes that requires both." Chapter 8. Dominoes Fall. The arrests of the 2 hired men sent shockwaves through the case. Ramon Terry was arrested Monday morning at his office, charged with conspiracy and solicitation of assault. His phone records and financial transactions provided clear evidence of payment and coordination. Once Ramon was in custody, he broke. Facing federal charges that could mean serious prison time, he gave up everything. How the fathers had pooled money to fund the LLC, how they'd used it to silence victims, how they'd planned to intimidate Santiago into backing down. His testimony implicated all 5 fathers. By Tuesday afternoon, Xavier Beasley, Josh Williamson, Israel Gregory, and Abel Humphrey were all arrested. The charges were extensive: conspiracy, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and thanks to the IRS investigation, multiple counts of tax fraud and money laundering. The men who thought themselves above the law were now facing years in federal prison. The third week of November became a media circus. The story had everything: wealthy families, corrupt institutions, a lone veteran fighting for justice. National news picked it up. Santiago's press conference from weeks ago was replayed constantly. But Santiago avoided the spotlight. He never wanted fame, never wanted to be a symbol. He just wanted his son safe and the people who'd harmed him to face consequences. The consequences were mounting. USC officially revoked Randolph Beasley's scholarship. Oregon did the same for Alvaro Gregory. The Big Ten schools withdrew their offers to Darnell Humphrey. All 5 boys faced trial in January for the attack on Santiago's property, and the DA was building cases for their prior assaults. Their futures, once so bright, were now uncertain at best. Coach Harlan Fitzpatrick faced charges of his own, not criminal, but civil. 3 former players filed lawsuits alleging negligence and hostile environment. The school district settled quickly, not wanting more publicity. Fitzpatrick's reputation was destroyed. His career was over. Carl Osborne resigned from teaching, took a position at a private tutoring company. He'd avoided legal trouble, but not professional consequences. No school district would hire him after the investigation revealed his pattern of dismissing student concerns. The school itself underwent massive restructuring. New principal, new athletic director, new policies about reporting and investigating complaints. The football program was placed on probation, several games forfeited, and the playoff run ended in humiliation. By Thanksgiving, the initial crisis had settled into grinding legal proceedings. The fathers had arraignments, bail hearings, and preliminary motions. The boys had court dates pushed to January. The civil suits against the school were moving through discovery. Santiago's family celebrated Thanksgiving quietly, just the 3 of them. Chase seemed lighter somehow, the trauma not gone, but no longer crushing him. He talked about college, about plays he wanted to audition for, about maybe studying creative writing. "You're going to do great things," Santiago told him over pumpkin pie. "This doesn't define you. What you do next defines you." "You sound like a fortune cookie," Chase said, but he was smiling. December brought unexpected developments. Catherine Ford, the girl Randolph Beasley had assaulted, filed a civil suit against the Beasley family for the original assault and the subsequent cover-up. Her lawyer was a shark, and the case was airtight. The Beasleys settled for an undisclosed amount. Word was 7 figures. The other 2 girls who'd come forward filed similar suits. More settlements. The families were bleeding money to legal fees and compensation to their sons' victims. Xavier Beasley's law practice folded. Ramon Terry's car dealerships filed for bankruptcy. Josh Williamson withdrew from his city council re-election campaign. Israel Gregory's medical practice faced multiple malpractice suits from patients claiming he'd been distracted during procedures, opportunistic but effective at destroying his reputation. Abel Humphrey's real estate empire contracted by 40% as investors fled. The dominoes kept falling. Christmas came, and with it, an unexpected visitor. Israel Gregory appeared at Santiago's door on Christmas Eve. No lawyers, no attitude. Just a broken man. "My son tried to kill himself last week," he said without preamble. "Pills. We found him in time, but..." His voice cracked. He said he couldn't take the pressure, the guilt, the future he'd destroyed. "I know I'm not supposed to contact you, but I need you to understand, they're just kids. Stupid kids who made terrible choices. Does the punishment have to be this severe?" Santiago stepped outside, closed the door. "Your son helped beat mine for a month. When Chase begged for help, your son laughed. When I asked for accountability, you threatened me. Now your son faces consequences and you want mercy. He's 16. His whole life is ruined. No, his football career is ruined. His reputation is damaged. But he's alive, he has family, and he has the opportunity to become better than he was. That's more than you offer, my son. More than Catherine Ford got when your group paid her to stay silent about being raped." Gregory's face crumpled. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. There's nothing you can say. Your son is facing justice. If that's too hard for him to handle, get him better therapy. But don't come to me for absolution. I'm not a priest, and I'm not your friend." Santiago went back inside, closed the door, and returned to his family. He felt no joy in Gregory's pain, but he felt no guilt either. These men had made their choices. Now they lived with them. Chapter 9. Earned Victory. January brought the trial. All 5 boys appeared together, tried as a group for the attack on Santiago's property. The evidence was overwhelming. Video from multiple angles, testimony from Chance and his team, the bats with their fingerprints, their own statements from the night of their arrest. The defense tried to argue entrapment, claimed Santiago had manipulated them into coming to his house. The judge shut it down immediately. The defendants made a conscious choice to arm themselves and travel to the plaintiff's property with intent to commit vandalism at minimum, possibly assault. That's not entrapment. That's criminal intent. The trial lasted 3 days. The verdict took 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge, a stern woman named Linda Walters, had read every victim impact statement, reviewed every piece of evidence about the boys' prior behavior. This court has heard arguments about second chances, about promising futures cut short, about boys making mistakes. But what I see are not boys making mistakes. I see young men who made calculated choices to hurt others, who showed no remorse until facing consequences, and who were enabled by adults who should have known better. This court sentences each defendant as follows: 18 months in juvenile detention, followed by 2 years of supervised probation. Upon release, each defendant will perform 500 hours of community service at youth centers and schools, speaking about bullying and its consequences. Each defendant is prohibited from participating in organized sports for 5 years. And each defendant will write personal apologies to Chase Griffin and every other victim of their actions. It wasn't everything Santiago had wanted, but it was justice. Real, tangible, meaningful justice. The fathers faced their own trials over the following months. The cases were complex, federal charges intertwined with state offenses. But the evidence was strong, and none wanted to risk trial. They all pleaded guilty to various charges. Sentences range from 3 years for Abel Humphrey, the least involved, to 7 years for Xavier Beasley, the architect of most cover-ups. None would practice their professions again. None would hold positions of influence. Their wealth was decimated by legal fees, restitution, and fines. They'd built empires on the belief that power and money made them untouchable. Santiago had taught them otherwise. Spring came to Colorado, bringing renewal and growth. Chase's play opened to excellent reviews. He played a supporting role, but stolen every scene with his presence. Colleges sent acceptance letters. Good schools, places that valued creative writing and his unique perspective. "I got into NYU," he told Santiago one April evening, voice shaking with excitement. "Full scholarship. They said my personal essay was the best they'd read this year." "What was it about?" Santiago asked, though he suspected he knew. "Surviving. Not just the bullying, but everything after. How watching you fight for me taught me about strength, but not the kind I thought. It's not about winning fights. It's about refusing to accept injustice." Santiago hugged his son, feeling pride and relief and gratitude. "You're going to change the world, Chase. I know it." In May, Northridge High held a town hall about their new policies. Santiago attended with Audrey and Chase. The new principal, a thoughtful man named Arturo Garner, laid out comprehensive reforms: mandatory reporting of bullying, independent oversight of athletics, regular climate surveys, and substantial consequences for staff who failed to protect students. "This school failed Chase Griffin and too many others," Garner said bluntly. "We're committed to making sure it never happens again. But commitment isn't enough. We need accountability and transparency. That starts today." After the meeting, several parents approached Santiago to thank him. One woman, her eyes bright with unshed tears, gripped his hand. "My daughter was assaulted by one of those boys last year. I wanted to report it, but they threatened us, said we'd lose everything. When you fought back, when you refused to be silent, you gave us permission to do the same. Thank you." Santiago didn't know what to say. never wanted to be a hero, had never sought recognition. But he understood that sometimes one person's courage could inspire others. Sometimes refusing to accept injustice mattered more than victory itself. June brought graduation. The 5 boys graduated from juvenile detention. Diplomas delivered in a ceremony Santiago was glad he didn't have to attend. Their lives were different now. No college sports, no bright futures, just the slow work of rebuilding from ashes. He hoped they learned, hoped they became better, but he didn't spend energy worrying about it. Chase graduated with honors, gave a speech about resilience and justice that had half the audience in tears. Santiago sat with Audrey, holding her hand, watching their son stand tall and confident in a way that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. "We did it," Audrey whispered. "He did it," Santiago corrected. "We just made sure he had the chance." That evening, Santiago stood on his back deck, watching the sun set over the mountains. His life had changed in ways he never expected. He'd gone from quiet contractor to reluctant warrior to something else entirely. A father who'd refused to let his son suffer injustice. The path hadn't been clean. He'd used skills learned in war, had manipulated and threatened, and occasionally crossed lines that troubled him. But his son was safe. The predators who'd hurt him faced consequences. The system that enabled them was reformed. Was it worth it? The stress, the danger, the moral compromises? Santiago thought of Chase, happy, healing, preparing for college and a future full of possibility. Thought of the other victims who'd found courage to come forward. Thought of the students at Northridge High who'd never be dismissed when they asked for help. Yes, it was worth it. The victory wasn't perfect. The revenge wasn't complete. But justice, real justice, never was. It was messy and complicated and sometimes required good people to make hard choices. Santiago had made his choices. He'd protected his son, exposed corruption, and fought for accountability. He'd been smart, strategic, and ultimately successful. Most importantly, he'd earned it. Every bit of it. As darkness fell and stars emerged over the mountains, Santiago went inside to his family. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new days, new moments. But tonight, he was at peace. The long game was over, and Santiago Griffin had won.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.